My brother, do you know what's happening in Sudan? Sudan? Do you know? I know it's complicated, right? It's very complex, but I'm going to try to break it down for you. One of the worst genocide is happening in Sudan, and the world is watching. And you haven't heard about this, but many black people are being unalived like goats and martins in Sudan. Lots of people are being unalived, and we need to talk about this very quickly. Basically, the Sudanese government has accused UAE of sponsoring genocide in their country. They're saying they are the reason why people are being unalived, because they are giving weapons to people that are unaliving black people. And guess what the ICJ has done? The ICJ say the UAE is not under their jurisdiction because they never signed the 1948 Convention against genocide. This is crazy stuff. You need to find out about this. Before we start, can I ask you to do this? Okay, let's do this, please. It costs you nothing. We feel appreciated. It's done. Great stuff. Let's find out about this. We are in Sudan. Sudan is right here. Sudan used to be the biggest country in Africa, but no more. It's now two different countries. There's Northern Sudan and Southern Sudan. The Northern Sudan is run by Arab-looking Africans, and the Southern Sudan is run by black people. Let's get back in time so we can understand. How did they fall out? What happened? Sudan got its independence in 1956 from the British and Egypt. Basically, Sudan has a population of Arabs in the north, Muslims, and in the southern is occupied by black people who are mostly Christian and sometimes animist and African believers. Now, after many years, there used to be people fighting against the government, people angry, unhappy. Sudan started seeing insurgencies and rebellions. What was the people complaining about? They were complaining about service delivery. They were mostly black people saying we are not being looked after. Basically, after independence, the government was run by Arabs, big institution by Arabs, hospitals, and every other thing. So in other words, the Sudanese government was only looking after the Arab-looking people in Sudan and not the black people. So the black people in Sudan felt neglected and abandoned. Therefore, they started claiming, saying, you need to look after us, or else we want to be separated, autonomous state. We want to run ourselves. Now, obviously, the Arabs didn't like that. I mean, a bunch of black people trying to act weird. Let's shut them up. And that's exactly what they did. So many groups of army by Arabs started shutting down the black people and beating them and unaliving them bad. So since 1956, we've seen a lot of rebels fighting for the very same cause, acting in a way that is very uniform. Their claim is you're not looking after us. Okay, you're basically taking care of Arab-looking people. You refuse to look after black people. Amongst the people that were beating and unaliving black people was a group named the Janjaweed. They were some of the most ruthless, dangerous people ever. They unalive as much black people without looking at color, age, gender, or anything. They basically did not just attack people with arms. They also attack villages with specific black people, and they will unalive all of them. They will rape women and finish children. Now, I'm sure you heard the story about Darfur. This happened between 2003 and 2010. It was mayhem. A lot of people lost their lives. People talk about 400,000 people lost their lives, but other editions talk about millions of people. Obviously, you know, when they talk about a lesser number, you know which number is more accurate. Black people were tired, angry, sad in Sudan, in their own country, feeling that they were being treated like second-grade citizens. They asked for independence. They wanted secession. And in 2001, it was granted to them. After many of them were unalived, they created their own country, which is this one, South Sudan. Now, in 2013, you remember the group I spoke to you about, the Janjaweeds, were now formalized. They were not a rebel group anymore. The government acknowledged them. They were sponsored by the governments to continue doing the work they were doing. So let me just remind you here, even though the black people of Sudan created South Sudan, some other black people couldn't go into South Sudan because of their physical location. Meaning, South Sudan, it's geographically in the south of Sudan, but not all black people are in the south of Sudan. But the only place that's got independence was south of Sudan. So many other black people in Sudan remained in the north and other places. Now they continue to be persecuted. They unalive them like martins. For what reason? The very same reason for which the black people in the south left. They were undermined, neglected, and underserviced. Back to 2013, the president was this man here, Omar al-Bashir. He had been in power since 1993. He was one of the most ruthless people against black people in Sudan. Now, al-Bashir took Janjaweed group of army and created what they call the RSF. The goal was very simple. Let's clean up the Janjaweed name because they've unalived too many people. They've done so much atrocity, and give it a bit of a formal name so people can forget about what they did in the past. And basically, after doing that, he did not understand that he created a parallel army. So the RSF became just as strong as the normal army because they received support and finances from the government. And on top of that, the RSF occupied many of the lands that got some of the goods of Sudan. Let me remind you here, Sudan is one of the biggest producers of gold. So the RSF occupied lands that was producing gold and mines, and they got used to that. As you would imagine, usually when you put somebody in a position of strength and they realize they can actually get rich through this, they start building an appetite to the things. Now, the RSF was led by this man, Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo, or else Ahmedi. We're going to call him Ahmedi. And the army was run by this man, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. So fellas, we got here two different group of people. The regular army that is run by this man, and the RSF, which is a ruthless private army by the president that is run by this one. Now, fast forward 2019, people in Sudan are very angry. We're talking about northern Sudan. They're not happy with the president anymore because of service delivery. Food is expensive. Things are not good at all. People went down the street shouting angrily against the president. Guess what happened next? Well, these two generals say, you know what? The president has actually been here for way too long. How about we overthrow him so we can get our own president? That's exactly what they did. They threw out Omar al-Bashir from power and they remained in power. Now, the goal, remember, was let's throw him over and bring another civilian so he can be the president. Well, that goal fell short because both of these guys, both of these leaders, each of them wanted to be the leader. Now, RSF refused to become a sub-element of the army because they felt like we're so strong, we have weapons, we have mines, we have gold. Why do we have to subject ourselves to the army? Because if we subject ourselves to the army, then we're losing our power. Why do we need to do that? How about we take over? Now, they were fighting over power, and that is exactly what's happening right now. Now, remember, the RSF was formed by the Janjaweed, and the Janjaweed didn't just fight rebels. They attacked entire villages associated with Fur, Malasit, Zagawat ethnic group. These are black people in Sudan. So the Janjaweed unalived the black people. That was their goal, to shut them up. And the Janjaweed became the RSF. Remember, now, black people of Sudan, even though they have always been oppressed by the Sudanese government, they prefer the army than the Janjaweed. Why? Because even though the army is not nice to them, the army still needs to be accountable to world politics, to world's opinion. So if the army does wrong things to black people in Sudan, world can speak about that and the army will feel ashamed about it and try not to do it. The Janjaweed don't give a continental. They will unalive you like sheep. They don't care. They have accountability to nobody. So even though they were in both difficult situations, they still prefer the army to the Janjaweed. The Janjaweed campaign included mass killing, rape, forced displacement, leading to international condemnation and charges of genocide. Now, here comes the UAE. How is the UAE involved? Now, basically, the army is accusing the UAE of sponsoring the RSF that was created by the Janjaweed. So, the army says the UAE is sending drones, weapons, Kalashnikovs, and intelligence services, that means satellite imagery, to the RSF. And by doing so, they're allowing the RSF to unalive as many civilians as possible. And that is the Gino they are participating into. Matter of fact, the Sudanese government accused UAE of actually sponsoring Colombian fighters to go fight against the government in Sudan. Now, you're probably asking yourself a question to know, why is the UAE involved? Why are they there? It's very simple. Sudan is the third biggest producer of gold in the world. So Sudan sends gold to the UAE, who is the biggest client. That's number one. So the UAE has invested tremendously into the gold in Sudan. And remember here, the mines of gold are right now controlled by the RSF, not the army. So the UAE will prefer dealing with the RSF directly, which is an unstable army, than dealing with the regular government. Because if you go to the regular government, then you have to fill in the papers, you have to pay the millions of dollars for the deal, as opposed to a bunch of people that put arms together. You can just drop them a couple of millions and you can have access to unlimited resources. So it's easier to deal with a disorganized bunch of killers than dealing with a structured army and government. The UAE has invested drastically on land, farmland in Sudan. Remember, the UAE is mostly desertic. Now, they need arable land to have their farms, their food, and everything. The UAE imports 90% of their food, and a lot of that come from Sudan. Now, they don't want to deal with the army, the regular people. They want to deal with the RSF. That's their choice. Now, why are we talking about this? Because today, the RSF has taken control of El Fasher, the last major city in Darfur held by the Sudanese armed force. So they're gaining terrain, okay? They're beating the army, they're beating the regular army, and they're taking terrain. And they have vowed to crush the army to the last. Now, remember, these are the people that used to be the Janjaweeds. Their goal was to unalive black people. They've unalived many of them. If they crush the army, what does that mean? They're going to crush everybody else who support the army. And remember, black people of Sudan support the army because they prefer the army being the lesser of the evils than the other one. So just to finish up, there used to be many rebel fighters in Sudan, especially those in Darfur, South Kordofan. Blue Nile belong to black ethnic African group. These include the Fur, Malasit, and all of that. I think you understand a little bit where we're going. And people are not talking about this. They're talking about Gaza and everything else, which is great. But they're not talking about Sudan because black people are being unalived like muttons and goats. Nobody gives a continental about them. And right now, the UAE has banned Sudan from flying the aeroplane over there because they have interest. I want to know how you feel about this. It was a great pleasure. I hope you understand, or at least have an idea. God bless.